Talked a little bit about the transfer portal just a second ago, and everybody loves it, right? Like this is the time of year, basketball transfer portal, like everybody's going crazy. And also I say this is the time of year, April, we're going to have the transfer portal opening in football. Also, you've got spring window portal in football. So it's going to get wild. And as much as people may complain about the portal, and I obviously understand the complaints, it's a really fascinating thing to follow. People love it. People love it. We can talk about long-term damage done to the sport by guys not sticking in one place, but for hardcore college football fans, like this is a unbelievable time to be paying attention, and it's fascinating to see all the movement and the rumors. Following Trilly's Discord if you're really into that. It's insane. It's insane what this has turned into. And you think about like the NBA, right? Like I feel like there's like more interest in the NBA offseason and the NFL offseason almost than the actual sports themselves, because it's like theater and drama, and you've got it in a more crazy, wild fashion in college sports than any of those professional sports for everything that we just talked about. Okay. It gives more hope to everybody. You had a bad season, turn the page to the portal, dude. There's no telling what you can do. You get yourself a pile of money, you get yourself a Cody Campbell-like booster, band fired up. Let's see what can happen here. But is the portal taking away more from the Big 12 right now than it's giving? That's the question I want to raise, because you might have a real problem here. Depending on how much you've been paying attention to what's happened in the portal. So I'm zeroing in on basketball here, okay? This is more of a hoops conversation, but Houston right now is setting the standard in Big 12 basketball. They certainly have for the last 2 years. They're the only Final Four participant for the Big 12 in the last 2 years. I would argue, probably were headed to a Final Four last year, if not for the Jamal Shead injury. So that would have been back-to-back Final Fours. Houston is setting the standard, but for the previous 25 years before that, Kansas was definitely setting the standard, bar none, in the league, and they are still the biggest brand by far in the league when it comes to hoops. But the Jayhawks, man, they have not. They're falling on hard times. Okay, Kansas has not been to a second weekend since 2022. They have not come close to winning the league the last 2 years. They were a 7 seed this year. They lost to John Calipari in the year of our Lord 2025 in the NCAA tournament. 10 seeded Arkansas that at one time was, I think, 4-9 in the SEC. Point being, their fans somewhat justifiably have been melting down a bit about what this season is. But hey, look, you got a Hall of Fame coach, you got plenty of resources, you got money, you got motivated donors. It should be fine, right? It should be fine in the offseason. Go hit the portal. Nobody should be more excited about the portal than Kansas fans, right? I don't know if that's true now either. Kansas has lost 5 players to the portal, 4 of which I think you can certainly live with. It sounded like, Kansas fans, maybe you would correct me, it sounded like David Coit was probably somebody that you wanted to keep around. Zach Clements and Rylan Griffin, maybe it didn't matter as much. But you definitely wanted to keep Flory Badunga around, who became the 5th to enter the portal from the Kansas roster. And really felt like the whole idea was, hey, Darren Peterson's coming in, who is another guy like AJ DeBonsta that's going to be much, much hyped. Big time high school prospects. So you pair him with Flory Badunga, who showed that guy just oozes potential last year. And bam, there's your 2 studs. You can kind of build around that. Well, now Flory Badunga is in the portal. And now you start looking at all these other guys like, man, this feels kind of like a mass exodus from Kansas. This feels like you're going to be building an entirely new roster next year, which is dicey. If you go look at the numbers, the returning production numbers for the 4 teams in the Final Four, everybody but Duke, who again has the transcendent freshman, everybody else has 75% and above returning production from the year before. Building it out, your entire roster in the portal that way is just not looking like it's a really successful way to do it. Not that it can't be done, but returning production, camaraderie, especially when you think about like Bill Self and kind of the way that he has built a lot of his championship teams. It was keeping guys around. It was developing players. I mean, they're going to have to go a totally different route here. And it's kind of a warning sign when you're losing somebody like Flory that definitely they wanted to keep. So look, Kansas is going to get dudes. They're going to find guys in the portal. I have no doubt that they're going to find talent in the portal. they've done that each of the last 2 off seasons. I mean, I think their classes have looked great. Like AJ Storr was a huge deal when they hit on him. Rylan Griffin, big deal when they got him out of the portal. But it just hasn't worked. It hasn't come together. And now you're going to be looking at doing a bunch of that again this year. And I don't know. And if Flory Badunga is not going to be a part of it, I mean, that was a guy that you had in your program, you had developed some and could continue to develop, under a guy who's been proven to be a great coach. If you're not taking him, I don't know. I feel like you need a couple of real studs to build around. And it sounded like Peterson and Badunga very well could have been that. And then you start filling in with guys that are better fits around them. I think that's something Duke, I heard Gary Parrish talking about this, like how John Shire did such a good job with that. Went and got a couple lottery picks, including one transcendent one in Cooper Flagg, and then filled in with good fits the rest of the roster and had certain traits and stuff that they were looking for. And that can be a really good way to do it. I don't know. You need the studs, though. And now if you're going out trying to take big swings, I mean, it felt like AJ Storr was a huge stud that Kansas got out of the portal last year, and it did not work at all. And then, injury to insult to injury, whichever way you want to look at it. Kansas is missing out on guys like Keyshawn Hall, UCF transfer. And I'm sorry to bring that up, Knights, but Kansas out apparently there. And early on, it sounded like the whispers were that was somebody that may well be a Jayhawk. So now I'm not paying attention in the trenches to every little thing as much as most Kansas fans that, would be watching this probably are. I'm sure maybe some will blast me in the comments and say, I don't really know. It feels like the vibes are not very good with all of that right now. Again, there's resources, a great coach, motivated donors. Like Kansas will find guys that at least on paper will look very good, but I don't know. I'm not liking where it feels like if you're a Big 12 fan and you're concerned with the best that the league has to offer and making the league the best that it possibly can be, you'd want Kansas basketball to be very healthy. And it still feels like it's in a pretty tenuous spot right now. So a lot of work to be done for Bill Self. Arizona, if we want to expand this out a little bit too, I'm looking around at Arizona, man. Like if we're talking about historically tradition-rich programs, I think Arizona, you're arguing, is the second best in the Big 12. And so you want Arizona to be good too. A nice run to the Sweet 16 this year. And had they not run into Duke, complete and total buzzsaw, maybe would have had a chance to do a little bit more. But pretty good year, but now that, KJ Lewis, really, really solid player. I like KJ Lewis a lot. Love that guy, his game, his effort, what he brought to that team. He's gone. So is Henry Vassar, the big man there. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name, but he's another guy that really had some impressive moments this year. So what's going on there? Tommy Lloyd's roster taking some hits that you maybe wouldn't have expected. I'm just saying, has my attention, man. Plenty of time to go in the portal, but Big 12 basketball, with the way the SEC is rolling right now, just do not want to be conceding that. And you're going to need your Kansas and Arizonas of the world to stay in pace, on pace, whatever, with Houston. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is the Big 12 putting too much pressure on Houston in relation to the Final Four? But don't put too much pressure on Houston just in relation to carrying the banner of the league in general. Like Kelvin Sampson's not getting any younger, okay? He's been the guy there. It's no guarantee that once he leaves, if it's going to be his son who takes over, whatever, that it's going to work out flawlessly. So don't put that pressure on Houston. The Big 12 is going to need some other people other schools to really, really step up. So anyway, just some thoughts there on what's happening in the portal.